Wednesday. And welcome to today's webinar. So my name is Jenna and I work for Emerging Destinations. We represent cool companies in cool places. Just to provide you a little bit of feedback, or sorry, not feedback, background, Emerging Destinations is the North American representation for the Guyana Tourism Authority, or GTAs, you commonly hear us refer to them as, and they handle all of the promotion and product development for the destination of Guyana. Today, though, I'm being joined by Ian Craddock from Bushmasters, who's going to talk to us about the jungle survival courses that they run in Guyana. I myself, I'm so intrigued by this product, and I hope you will be too. I have not got down to Guyana to do the jungle survival course yet, but I'm hoping that the second that travel reopens, it'll be one of the first places that I get down to. So before we get into what a jungle survival course is, I want to take a quick minute just to introduce our portfolio to you, our South American portfolio to you, since that is where we are talking about today. We have, of course, Guyana, as I just talked about. We have Terra Nova, a bit further north there in Costa Rica. We also have Hotel Las Torres and Fantastico Sur and Cruzandino, who are all in Patagonia in Argentina and Chile. We have Jungle Experiences doing the Amazon River cruising in Peru. And we have Grand Hotels Lux, who have properties in Argentina and Uruguay. So if you have any questions about any of our other clients or the ones that I just mentioned, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is at the bottom of the screen there. So if you are interested in receiving more information or any digital links, feel free to reach out to me. A couple quick housekeeping items to go over before we begin. As always, this webinar will be recorded. So if you do need to step away or take a call, anything like that, don't worry, we will be sending the recording out to everyone early next week. We would also like to welcome you to participate. So using that go-to control panel on the right-hand side there, there's a little questions tab. Please feel free to write through a question or comment throughout Ian's presentation. We will get him to answer as many of these questions at the end of the session as possible. However, if there are some that we're unable to get to, we will make sure that we send those to you in our webinar follow-up next week. But on that note, I'm going to hand things over to Ian, who is going to tell us more about the different jungle survival courses that they offer in Guyana.
Hi, my name is Ian from Bushmasters, and today's webinar is about the jungle survival course that we run in Guyana in South America in the Amazonian rainforest. Bushmasters was formed in 2005. It's a British company. But also registered here in Guyana, where obviously we do the courses. We don't have much primary pristine jungle in the UK. Since 2005, we've done over 100 of these jungle survival courses. It is the most popular one that we run, and we probably run it, it changes each year, but about 4 or 5 times each year. It consists of a basic training phase. The whole idea is that we take people who have had no experience or training in this in the past at all. We've had people who have not even camped in a tent in their back garden as a kid with their parents. So no pre-training or knowledge is required. We cover all the things that needs in basic training phase. We then move on to a more advanced training phase where we put into practice the things that you have been learning and concentrate on some more specific key skills before going into the test phase, which we call isolation, which is when we leave you on your own in the jungle with just a basic survival kit and the skills that you have learned to survive. That all takes place over a 2-week period. And from a few years ago, For those who really loved it and wanted to push themselves even further, we brought in an extreme survival course, which I'll speak a little bit about later. The booking process is pretty simple. Everything is online. We work and operate in a rainforest environment, so we don't do anything in hard copy on paper. There's no magazines, there's no pieces of paper, booking forms, etc. It's all done online. The cost is $2,400 US for the 2 weeks, and it works on a 25%, 75% payment structure. So it's a deposit of 25% with the balance due a few months before the course. During that time after booking, there'll be quite a lot of conversations going on between us. We send you a kit list, the things that you need to bring to the jungle, which isn't much because we provide the vast majority of it. It's basically the clothes that you wear, the boots that you wear, and your washing kit, or the specialist jungle gear we will provide. And also various forms, personal information forms, so we have the likes of your flight details in case there's delays in flights and so forth. Closer to the time, once we have everyone's flight information, we'll arrange a meetup, which is normally in the capital city of Georgetown, and a time for that, so we can get everyone together, make sure you've got all your gear before we head off into the forest. And obviously during the entire process, up until the day that you arrive, any questions or queries you have, no problem at all. Just send us the message. Okay, the arrival, normally in Georgetown, which is the capital city of Guyana, mainly because that's where the 2 international flights arrival airports are based. There are no other airports in the country. But we have had a few people in the past who have been traveling South America and they came in overland from Brazil and so on. So if you plan to travel that way, just let us know and we'll accommodate you. It's not a problem. For those who are arriving in Georgetown, all the accommodation is sorted on that first night. We meet you at the hotel, make sure everyone's happy, have a few beers, and then get ready for the movement into the forest. We base ourselves from a Makushi Amerindian village in the center of the country called Sarama, where they have a small eco-lodge. You can see the image there. That's the Sarama Eco-Lodge, and that mountain range in the background with the jungle, that's where we're going. Once we fly in that morning, we have lunch there, and then we spend the afternoon checking all the kit that you have brought to make sure it's good, and also issuing you all the gear that we will give you, everything from hammocks to machetes, water bottles, camelbacks, and so forth. And getting all that ready, because we need to make sure that when we head into the forest the next morning, you have everything you need. There are no shops to go and get something if you forgot something. And of course, we go through the course brief and the various safety briefs before heading in, which is normal in any remote area environment. It's no different being the jungle. Okay, the basic training. This takes place at our own survival school at a place called Rock Landing. You can see in the image here, that's the school. You can see the rocks in the river, hence the name. Huge rocks the size of houses, very pretty spot. We trek into that location, which is about 5 kilometers into the forest. First day, the main thing that we concentrate on is getting you up to speed on using your machetes, which is your #1 most important survival tool in a rainforest environment, and setting up your hammock, which is going to be your home for the next couple of weeks. That's where you sleep, that's where you live from. I'll show you an image of the hammock setup in a moment, but it's very cool, very comfortable. I spend about 200 days of the year in a hammock, and it's far more comfortable than a bed most of the time. We're at Rock Landing for 4 nights, and we go through a whole range of skills, from use of how to make fire, how to collect and purify water, what foods we can eat, whether they be from the rivers, mammals, and from the forest itself, from the trees, setting up traps. And we also have daily briefs where we go through the theory behind what you're doing. It's important to understand, for example, the environment of a tropical rainforest, how it works, how it lives, so that you can understand how to survive in it. And we do a lot of practice. We do a lot of bow and arrow training, shooting the Makushi bows and arrows, all of which are made by the Amerindian guides who will be with you throughout. So it's quite embarrassing watching them shooting and then us having a go. They're pretty accurate. But we practice a lot, and people do get much better, and they love their time spent every morning competing with each other to see who's the best with their bow and arrow. And the other big important thing that we do during this 4 days at the survival school is to build your personal survival kit. I know there's lots of them available on eBay and in outdoor stores and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, no matter what environment you're going into, a survival kit needs to be something that you have created for that environment, and that you know how it works and how to use every single thing that's in them and how to fix it when it breaks. So we spend a fair bit of time actually physically building your survival kit. And you do that, and that goes into your pouch, and that is what you will survive from isolation. As I said, you sleep in hammocks. There they are. That's mine on the left. But they all look exactly the same. Big 3-meter square tarp over the top with a hammock and mosquito net built in below it, with all your worldly possessions hanging up off the ground in the trees there. Very comfortable, really airy. It's kind of like when you're camping and you have that fresh air environment, you can hear all the sounds of the forest and so on and so forth. You really feel like you're in it, as opposed to in a building when you know that there's a wall in the way or something. So it's quite therapeutic from my point of view. Okay, fire is one of the main things that we practice. Obviously, we've got to get a fire going, and then the reasons for it. Everything from that guy on the left there is actually burning a stick to peel the bark, so as to make a fishing rod from it to catch bait fish. And then on the right, in one of our camps, that's dinner. Water's boiling, ready for a cup of tea. Being English, we have to have a cup of tea available at all times. Water, it is the tropical rainforest. Guyana is one of the water richest countries on the planet. And so we have a lot of rivers, a lot of creeks, a lot of streams where we can get water from. But of course, we have to purify that because our weak Western bellies really can't take it straight from the creek most of the time. But there are also other ways. There's a water vine in the left-hand picture there, Capadula vine, which grow naturally. They can be easily cut, and they pour out fresh, ready-to-go drinking water. Many years ago, that was the source of Viagra. So if you come on the course, we'll tell you all about that. Food, of course. You can't survive very long doing physically active things in a harsh environment like the rainforest without eating. Fish is the mainstay. The rivers are teeming with them. Piranha here in the photo, roasting on the sticks. But also there are things that we as humans can eat from the forest. And on the right there, that girl Jess, she's munching away on a piece of heart of palm from the manicle palms, which grow all over the place. We also teach you a few local traps. This is what the people use today. They go out to trap small mammals, wild boar or pigs, things like that, to bring home for food for the family. So they're very adept at building these, and they know the ones that work. They have to be simple, something you can create easily, 90% of it coming from the forest, and which you can build a lot of in a short space of time to increase your chances. Always a lot of fun on trap day. The briefs, that's held in the survival school in the building there. So each morning we'll have a different set of briefs. The environment, as I mentioned, the psychology of survival, And we also talk about the environmental hazards for the rainforest. But also we're practicing a lot. So we've done farm making on day one, but you don't do it once and that's it. Every evening, everyone goes off to their hammock and the first thing they do is practice making fire. No matches, no lighters, just the kit that's in your survival pouch. And then the bows and arrows. We have a couple of ranges set up. So every day we're practicing on those, making things a little bit more difficult each time, obscuring the targets, having the targets move, putting bushes in the way, lots of different things to increase your accuracy with the bow and arrow. And it is all about accuracy, not power. A lot of fun had on the bows and arrows, and a lot of the guys actually get the bows and arrows from the locals, from the Amerindians, and take them home with them as souvenirs. I've actually got a few up on the wall in my house where I am now. And then your survival kit. That sits in a belt kit, a couple of pouches with a machete, as you can see the guys wearing them. One pouch has a water bottle, the other one has your survival kit, and then your machete. And all the items that are in the survival kit, we have them there, but you're the one that builds them. You're the one that creates them. You're the one that makes all your different sizes of fishing hook and so forth, and create your own survival pouch so you know how it works. The advanced training, we move on to a different location. We leave Rock Landing behind, and we head off to set up a new base camp, and there are no facilities at this new location. There's no Rock Landing schoolhouse. It is simply what you have on your back. And in that advanced phase, after we set up the base camp, we'll cover fishing, survival shelters, hunter-gatherer, night spotting, and then get you prepared and briefed, ready for the isolation phase. So the base camp, we normally head off by boat. The rivers are the natural highways of the jungle. So we can cover vast distances. In a few hours, we can cover 20, 30 kilometers, which would normally take you 3 days walking with a pack in a rainforest. So we can get very much deeper into the forest. And there we set up a base camp where you all have your own personal hammock systems, but then we have a central location for the campfire and where we can all meet up and so forth. Fishing. One of the best, greatest fun things to do is fishing. The rivers are teeming with fish, and some of them, quite a lot of them, are big. These two monsters you see here, that's a black piranha on the left. So anyone who thought piranha was small, have a look at that. And that's not even the biggest one. And on the right there, that's an aymara, or wolffish, one of the oldest creatures living on the planet, have been around for tens of millions of years. Lots of those in the forest. They can get up to about 20 kilos, 25 kilos, about 50 pounds. Lots of meat on those. That's my favorite fish, roasted on the fire. Shelters. Obviously, when you're in isolation, you're not going to have your rucksack full of hammocks and so forth. So one of the big things we need to teach you is how to build quickly a survival shelter. If you spend all day building a shelter, then that's very tiring for a start off, and of course you've had no time to do other important things like drink water and hunt for food and set traps and so forth. So the shelters we build are very simple. It's exactly the same thing the Amerindians have used day in, day out for thousands of years. And that particular one that you see in the image there, we can build that from scratch in about 30 minutes. So not a long time to create something, which gives you plenty of time to go off and do other things. We have a whole day hunter-gathering where you're out with your bows and arrows, walking around through the forest, trying to keep still and quiet, looking out for things that are useful. Now, we've already pointed out to you in the basic training various plants which are useful. And as we move around in the hunter-gatherer phase, if you find these, you can pop them into your pouch and keep them for isolation. So on the right there, those nuts, we call them kukrit nuts. They come from a palm. And inside of those, there's normally a little grub. which you can eat if you're feeling like a snack, but most importantly, we use them to help us catch bait fish. Big fish eat little fish, so the more bait fish you can catch, the more chance you have of catching a big fish. And we're also out in the evenings, both in the basic training and at the advanced training. We go out at night just for fun, just to go and have a look to see what's in the forest. And at night, it comes to life. So catching small caiman or seeing emerald tree bearers in the trees there, it's a pretty common thing. Every time we go out, we see something cool. It's a really special place at night. Finally, of course, time runs out and it's time for your isolation phase. So the night before you go in, we go through a briefing as to what's going to happen the next day, what kit you are allowed, which is basically your survival kit and your bow and arrow. You can take things like your camera and so forth to take photos and so forth, but we'll also go through the things that are not allowed. So you can't take food, you can't take your watch, you cannot take a torch. And then the safety plan. Everyone has a small little bag with them which contains radios, walkie-talkie style radios, which we've checked, and they work from your location where you're going to be isolated back to the base. So you can call us very quickly. And then the final thing is just to confirm whether or not you're going in on your own or you want to go as a team. And that's completely down to you guys, and I'd recommend you wait on that decision until the isolation phase comes around. So, isolation itself. You can go as a single, you can go in pairs, you can go as a group. We've had all of these things happen before, it's totally down to you. As I said, you don't have much. You have your survival kit, that belt kit that you saw in the previous image with your machete, bow and arrow, and that's a safety bag I mentioned with the walkie-talkie. And of course, you can take things like your camera and a power bank to charge it and so forth, so you can get some great shots. So this image of a survival shelter was actually taken by one of the guys in survival. So you see he's got his shelter set up, he's got his firewood underneath the shelter ready to go, bow and arrow stood by, and that's his home for the next few days. And like I said, no torch, no watch, no food. You are surviving. It's 2 days, the whole phase, before rescue comes. We don't give you an exact time. You don't have a watch, so you wouldn't know it anyway. And then eventually rescue will come. And we bring you back to the boat landing where it all started and head back to the village, to Sarama Lodge for lunch, which everyone is very, very happy about. That image on the right there, that's the first ever team that we did on a survival course back in 2005. And of course, after lunch, a big D-kit, big wash up. Everyone's in the shower for an hour, scrubbing themselves, and then lots and lots and lots of celebratory beers. Okay, so who comes on a survival course? It's one of the most frequently asked questions. To be honest, the answer is anybody. We've had people from all over the world, from all walks of life. The only thing I'd say is on the group courses, the scheduled courses that we run, it is an adult course, so it's geared for people who are over 18. But we've had a guy who was 72 from Norway, who was as strong, if not stronger, than anyone else on that particular course. So there's no age limitations. And the type of people vary massively. So in this course here, you might spot my guy on the right stood next to me. That's Channing Tatum, the movie star. He came out here on a course with some of his buddies a few years ago. And then on other courses, this is one from about 3 or 4 years ago. The guy on the right is a vet from the UK. The guy on the left with the lady next to him, they're from Scotland and they make kilts. So if you want to buy a kilt, I know a person who can make one for you. Get it in your own tartan. On this course here, the guy stood up, bow and arrow, third from left. He's an air traffic controller from Canada. On this image, the guy wielding the machete above his head, he's a roofer. He lives down in Australia now. The guy on the right with the shades, he's a teacher going along. The girl on the far left actually works on the cruise ships. So she's a very, very different lifestyle on a fancy cruise liner compared to being in the jungle. A few different guys here. That guy second from left, he's actually works on yachts. He's a skipper on yachts. And then down to this trip here, there's that 72-year-old Norwegian I spoke about on the left of the image, got a beer in his hand. And people come from all over. He was from Norway, the chap next to him is from Ireland. The girl in the middle and the guy next to her with the long hair, they're both from the States. The warry-looking man with the machetes and the sunglasses on his head, he's from Poland. And then the other two are from Australia and Slovenia. So lots and lots and lots of different countries, lots of different people. Okay, a few very brief words on the extreme survival course. This was started about 3 years ago. It is only open to those people who have successfully completed the basic course or come from a background that gives them some serious training before they're about to do what they're about to do. So in that image, the guy on the right there in the camouflage, he's actually from Swedish military. But all the rest of them, all general people. There's a Brit there, there's a Canadian, there's an American, the guy in the middle with the beard who thinks he's a Viking, he's from Denmark. And the guy on the far left is from Switzerland. All of them had done survival courses in the past, and they came back for the extreme course. It itself is 2 weeks long. As you can see, that chap there is enjoying those 2 weeks. It starts off with refresher training, just to make sure everyone reminds themselves of what they did on their basic courses. And then we bring in some more advanced stuff, in particular navigation. Because one of the key things on this course is that you're going to be on your own for a much longer period of time, and you have to get yourself out. There's no rescue. The isolation and the self-rescue phase, which is done after all the refresher training, you are spread out over a much larger area. And we actually track you on satellite tracking devices. And then you yourself have to get yourself out. You have to navigate yourself through the forest out to a rendezvous to safety. That entire phase, the isolation, self-rescue and all that, is at least 7 days long. And it's the same as before. No food, no water. You have to take your survival kit and look after yourself. And then when you come out, you can look as happy as this man here. That's the rendezvous, a road, and as you can see, after 7 days, he is over the moon with happiness that he got out. Although a few minutes later, when the beer started flowing, they were all much more smiling. So that's the extreme course. We deliberately don't tell you much about that course. The whole point of survival is that you can survive. If you know everything that's going to happen before you go in, then that's forewarned and forearmed, and that's not a true representation of what happens in real instances. So especially on this course, the advanced course, which we run once a year, normally in September, we give you very little information about it beforehand. But it's a cracking course. You lose quite a lot of weight, but everyone who comes out of that feels that they have achieved something amazing. So that's it. That's the jungle survival course that we run down here in Guyana. 2 weeks long, as I mentioned. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free.
All right, so thank you so much for that presentation, Ian. Um, so interesting. I love that whole presentation. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share that with us. We have a few questions have come in here now. So the first one is, if the person in extreme rescue can't self-rescue, will you find him or her, and how does that process look?
Yes, we'll find them. Basically, you're operating in a large area that is a box. There's a road on one side, a river on another side, and so forth. And me and a bunch of guides are actually following you through the forest. So you think you're on your own, but we're basically not very far away. And like I said, we have you on a tracking system. And you can actually communicate to us with that system, kind of like WhatsApp. So we can A, track you, and B, you can communicate with us as well. So we can come and grab you if you need to. But it's an extreme course, so just being tired isn't really a good enough excuse. There needs to be a good excuse for us to come and get you.
Perfect. Just for both courses, there's a question here. Do you learn about animal tracking and edible and poisonous plants prior to your stint in the jungle?
Yes, not so much the animal tracking. It's a vast area, and the animals that live here, with a few exceptions, have to be very, very, very stealthy because they get eaten by all the predators. And on the top 10 list of predators, we're not even in there compared to jaguars and anacondas and so forth. So actually tracking them is very difficult. But what you can do is identify where they move. So you're out in the day, and if you look carefully, you can follow the lines that they trample down through the bush and so forth, which is where we would set traps. You don't just randomly set them. And it's the same with the plants. We go out in the first phase looking at the various plants, those that are not good for us and those that are good for us, and identifying them. But again, humans aren't part of the jungle ecosystem, and so people seem to think there's lots of stuff that we can eat and so forth from the trees. And that's just not the case because of the pH balance of the fruit, or the fact that the fruit is 200 foot up in a tree and we're not monkeys and birds. So it's harder than you think, but they are there, and it's more of a case of identifying them, spotting them. And once you've got that bit sorted, getting the actual heart of palm from a palm tree, or collecting the kukri grubs, or identifying the water vines is pretty straightforward.
Great. All right. So how fit does one have to be in order to complete the course? Now, I don't know if that could be, you can speak to both of them if you want.
The basic course, it's not about fitness. It's about positive mental attitude. And I go on about this a lot because survival is 90% about mindset. So being super fit isn't the biggest thing, but in anything that you do in an outdoors environment, especially if you're in a new type of environment, if you come from a temperate northern hemisphere environment, you go straight into a tropical jungle, the fitter you are, the better your body and therefore your mind will cope with it. So you don't have to be, super fit. It's actually better if you can be as fit as possible, not carrying backpacks for 10 hours every day through the forest and so forth. It's a learning course. And I've done the extreme course. You need to be mentally robust for that one. But again, the physically stronger, not stronger, but the more physically robust you are, the better. It just helps, keeps the mind in the right place.
So another question here, what is the background for a lot of your staff? Are they ex-military, or are they civilians who have completed the courses which allow them to train people? Can you talk about that for us, Ian?
Yeah, well, I'm on every one of these. I'm ex-military from the UK, and obviously the military do an awful lot of survival courses. I've done jungle, Arctic, desert, temperate. I've suffered in every environment pretty much. The rest of the team that are with us in the jungle are all Amerindians from the local community, which basically means they were born in the forest. Every single day of their life, they've lived from it. And in Guyana in particular, the Amerindians, they speak English, which is great, so you can actually communicate with them. I don't know any indigenous rainforest people who actually speak English other than these guys. But they still live from the forest. They don't have electricity. They don't have taps to turn on for water. They don't have jobs, which gives them cash so they can go and buy things. If they want to eat, they make themselves a bow and arrow only from things that they find in the forest. There's no shop to buy string in. And off they go and they hunt. And they've learned this over the generations from their fathers. And I mean, I've been in the forest quite a few times with a few of my guys, and they bring their kids, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and they're out there shooting bow and arrow better than me, which is really embarrassing and annoying. So they're the main experts. They're the masters of the bush in this instance. They don't have a compass. They don't have a map. They know where they are all the time. They are laughing and joking. It's really comfortable for them when they're in the forest. And they love showing people that as well, and those skills, and just the way that they handle their machetes, the way they move, the silence. They spot, feel, hear things light years before we do. So there's always a good number of them. There's probably about 6 of the local guides with us throughout the survival course.
Wonderful. So another question, do you use spot beacons for the satellite tracking?
Do we use Spot? No, we don't use Spot. It's crap.
Okay.
No, we use.
I didn't know what the question meant, but.
Yeah. No, there are several different trackers around the world, and you have to understand quite a lot of these. One of the really boring courses I did in the army actually was about GPS and how it worked. We had blokes there trying to talk us through equations and datums and all sorts of things, which I hated at the time, but in years now, it's come back to be of some use. So you have to understand how the system works, what satellite network they're working to, and so forth. And we use a system called InReach, which is owned by Garmin. The satellite network is bigger. They have a new generation up there which allows it to penetrate the canopy. And they also have the ability to communicate backwards and forwards. And most importantly, the tracking system is relayed to me in the jungle without me needing internet. Most of the other systems, you need to have like a computer in an office plugged into the internet to see the tracking, whereas I don't need that. I can do it in the forest, and my office also tracks it. So we use that system, and it's getting better actually. They just launched a ton of new satellites for the next network, so it will actually be getting better. We've used that now. We actually tested it for about 2 years in the deserts, which worked well, which I was expecting, even in the mountainous areas where you sometimes can get a blocked signal. And then we used it for about 2 years just for my own personal use in the jungle to see how it works. And I've never had an issue with the signal. It's really good. But we always have backups to that because technology can fail.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we have quite a few people writing through to ask about what the risk is of being attacked by either an animal or a snake, or what, and how would you deal with an emergency if somebody did get bitten by a snake or something, for example?
Yep. The risk is exceedingly low. Really, we've never, ever had a case of any animal problem with people. They're not interested in us, and the only way that can change is if we start messing around with them, which of course we discourage massively. The main injuries that when they do occur, and again it's very rare, are self-inflicted. And the biggest ones are to do with the heat and the environment, so not drinking enough water to ensure that you stay hydrated, because that's something that can hurt you bad really quick. Hurting yourself with the machete. There's a lot of times people are cutting themselves, although it's rare that it's serious. But during the first phase, you're in the schoolhouse area, which is for 4 days. So in those early days, we're constantly going on about drinking water, and we can watch and assess people to make sure that they're coping with the environment. And that location is actually attached to the village by a road, and we can actually bring a vehicle in and take you out very, very quickly. And then when we move further into the forest, obviously we keep boats with us at all times, so that if anyone has an injury and they need to go out, either to Georgetown for something serious or to the local facilities, then we can do that. And then in isolation, of course, you have communications with the base. And of course, we have our own very comprehensive medical kit and setup with us throughout. But it's exceedingly rare. I think in 15 years, I can think of 2 people that we've sent out. One because they got bit bad and one because they cut themselves with a machete, but never an animal encounter.
Great. All right, one last question for you here, Ian, before we wrap up. And if there are any questions we didn't get to, don't worry, we will definitely be sending you the answer to those in the webinar follow-up. The last question for you today, though, is how hot is the temperature there?
It's actually, the heat isn't the big issue in the canopy, because you've basically got a huge umbrella above you. In the savannah, before we move in from the airstrip at the lodge and so forth, and when you're on the river, then you can feel the heat. And we are sub-equatorial, which means we're about 3 degrees north of the equator. So hot, over 30 Celsius, close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit most days. But you don't feel that so much under the canopy, but what it can get is very humid, because the canopy keeps the moisture in. So you're always sweating, but as long as you drink water, it's fine.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation and for staying on to answer all of these questions for us. Just so everybody knows, our webinar recording will, of course, be sent out next week, and it also gets posted to our Emerging Destinations YouTube channel. In addition to, it will be posted on our Emerging Destinations website as well. So thank you so much for taking the time today to join us. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, or if you want to speak with Ian, I can always put you in touch with. So thank you so much. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.